Today our panorama is from the Arctic region of Norway, and we are on the magnificent island of Senja. This is a place renowned for its peaks and mountains, and there is a particular location high up in one of the mountain road passes that I want to photograph. It's known as the Svandalen Nature Reserve. It's a beautiful open area where you can see for miles. It's early morning in midwinter and it's snowing. It's tumbling down, soft and lovely. It's been snowing all night and there is more forecast. We drive before the sun gets higher in the sky and pass a snowplow clearing the mountain road. As we approach near the top of the pass, we see the winter sun poke its head above the ridgeline. We keep driving, keeping an eye out for a safe place to park and get into position to photograph this wonderful scenery. I head out, making tracks in the soft powder, looking for the right place to shoot my panorama. There is another storm looming, a big snowstorm coming. You can see it in the clouds behind. I want this wonderful light before we lose the sun behind those clouds, and so I quickly shoot my set of 6 images. So we take our 6 images that we have in a folder ready for the purpose of this panorama, take the whole lot together into Photoshop. And once Camera Raw opens, we can see that we've got them down there on our film strip. Select all, and then we merge to Panorama. And our program should build this 6 image panorama quite quickly, and there it comes. Now, as I've mentioned in presentations before, one of the first things I do is 100% boundary warp, and then I look between the spherical and the cylindrical to see which suits me best. I'm thinking the spherical, there is enough foreground, and so I merge this image. We save it in the same folder where our 6 individual files are kept. And that is our DNG file that we can use again and again. Once we bring it into Photoshop, there's a few things I want to do. First of all, I'm looking at my shadows. I want them right up. I want the whites right down. But do you see that sun there? I want the highlights right up. So I'm going to gradually bring it towards the right-hand side, just so that it diffuses that sun a little more, because we're going to work on this feature with our panorama. I now do my gradient, and I'm very careful as to the toning in the, first of all, the top. I want the toning to be just right in the, right off the blues actually, and a little bit of warm tint. And we can work on this again. And then the bottom, I want a little bit of tint there, but I again need to be very careful how I select my tint and what kind of temperature I have. We can cool the foreground down a lot more than, say, the sky. And we can also put a second one in there just to get it right, being very careful of the exposure. So often it's a good idea to take the top of the aeroplane and pull it right away from your image so that that gradient is very, very feathered and we hardly discern the line of it. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We have some dark areas which I can work on once we get that into Photoshop. I now want to look at the overall tint and temperature. It was a warm scene because it's obviously backlit and the sun is shining ever so briefly, and I want the right kind of light. So in our color saturation, I want to bring the yellows towards the oranges, and I want to back the oranges off that little bit. There are some minute adjustments that need to be done here. And so this could take a little time to get the color just right, to get the temperature of the sun, how you feel it was at the time that you shot these images. Once we go back into the basics of the sliders, we can then slightly adjust our texture, our clarity. We can look at how much vibrance we want. We don't need too much at this stage. So I take that up to around the mid-40s in percentage-wise. Once I'm happy with that, we can then merge it. because we can finalize these things that we've done with our sliders once we have brought it into Photoshop itself. Once there, I'm looking at a number of things. First of all, I want to look at the color balance. And you can see up here and down there and over here, we have a slight magenta cast. And there's a couple of things we need to do. First of all, we can look at the color balance. Maybe bring the blues up a little bit and maybe back it off the magentas and off the reds. And of course, when we use this program here on the right side, we can actually fill it with black. We can change the opacity. We've then made this vector mask where we can just brush in the parts of the image that we want to change. I'm probably going to work on this image quite a bit in these corners until it's finished. There's a couple of other things I want to show you in this presentation, so we'll probably leave it here at the moment. And the next thing I want to do is look at the levels and maybe just bring those corners up while we're on that subject. So you can see how I've lightened up the whole photograph now. Again, with our vector mask, we fill that with black to hide what we've just done, and then we grab the brush tool, we pop it off we pop it off the opacity in normal right down so that we just very carefully lighten those dark areas until we get it just right. And as I said a moment ago, I will probably come back to this and do some more with this image in these corners before I completely finish this image. We can also use the opacity scale, as I'm showing you here on the right side, to bring that opacity down just enough so that it's looking quite good. Okay, so let's finally just check our curves. We put a dot in the black and the white, and in between we just tweak that very, very small amounts until we're happy with it. And you can see that by using a few of the different tools, we can actually improve this image out of sight. Next, I just want to go through the image and enlarge where I need to so that I can get a closer look at some of the there is a couple of little blotches in the clouds, a couple of camera marks. There's also a couple of flare spots that we kind of need to look at just so that the overall image is looking rather nice. Okay. In the hue saturation now, I'm going to back off the magentas again. So you can see what I'm doing. If you look at the two corners, the magentas are coming off that tiny bit more. Now we can play with our sliders as much or as little as we like till we get it just how we feel the coloration should be. Now I'm going to save this image because I'm going to show you something again that I've shown before to do with the sun. So we just save that in our folder and then hide Photoshop, and you can see it's popped into the folder of where our images are and our DNG, and we take that into Luminar. Now I've shown you this in a previous presentation, and every time I do it, I want to show you something different. This time we're still using the sun rays. We get those into position using our Y and our X sliders. We want that right over where the sun actually is shining. And like I said before in previous presentations, we need to really work our sliders. Sometimes we need to use more glow radius, sometimes less. We need to look at the length of the sunburst and how far out those sun beams come. We also need to look at how warm we want the actual sunbeams to be and the overall warmth of the sunlight itself. And you can do this by adjusting each slider in turn. You could actually spend quite a lot of time working on your individual sun pictures, and I often do this when I've got some extreme backlighting. So I'm just working the randomize button just to change the sun stars. You'll notice that I've got more coming radiant out from the bottom. That looks a little better, and it's disappearing into the clouds above. Okay, so we export that as a JPEG with an E, and be careful that that's it, we put it into the same folder where we've got our other files. And there you can see we have the JPEG with an E, and we also have our original JPEG. So taking that new one we've worked in Luminar, back we come, and if I click over, you can see just that little bit of work I've done on the actual sun. So that forms the basis of my backlit photograph now. And what I'm going to do, final details, I'm going to get rid of a few other things in the photograph I don't like. There are some sunspots. I also don't like the roadside markers. They're a little bit distracting. So this is to individual taste. And then I just work through the image, maybe take out a couple of the tree stumps that don't look right. There's a couple of blotches still in the photograph. You'll see up here just under the radiant sun, we have some blotches, a little bit in the clouds here. Yeah, it's looking good. We can be as fussy as we like, as long as we don't overdo it. And there's a little bit of flare there that I want to get rid of. That's looking much better. And a couple more here and there. And then as I zoom back out again, we can see that all those bits and pieces and eye magnets have disappeared. Okay, so I'm now going to select some warm tone, and sometimes we don't get this right the first time. We can often get a yellow that's not quite right, and we just need to adjust it. Watch our vivid light and the amount of opacity. See there, it's too yellow. I want it toned down a little bit, so go into my history, get rid of that, and redo the colouring. So you can see I want to match the colouring. Once I've got it right, very gently in vivid light with very little opacity, I can then just brighten up the sun itself and the light that's emanating from the sun. We can then come down to just a warm white, and then we can adjust our brush to actually emphasize the highlighted areas that the sunshine has made. And it's surprisingly that if you just do this very gently and small amounts with your opacity slider, gradually you will layer it until it looks fantastic. Not too much at one time. You can see again that over there's some more white needed, or brighter areas, again with the sun hitting that edge of the mountain there. And the wonderful thing about your history too is if you do one brush stroke too much, you just click it off, drop your opacity, and maybe do it again and again. Less is more. Keep your opacity brush right down, and it's a matter of just working it artistically and in small amounts to get it just right. And finally, I'm just looking at those dark corners. I'm going to work on those a little bit more, I think, in a moment. Just want to brighten up the last bit of cloud. Here we go. I'm going to, yes, I've got to get that yellow right. Here we go. A little bit more cream. That's better. And then basically, I'm going to bring out the highlights of the sun again. Tiny little bit more in the clouds. You can see how I'm doing what I've just said. I'm gradually using the brush in small amounts, and I'm bringing and highlighting the clouds and what the sun has done to this gorgeous backlit image. There's a fine line too between how much we do and how little we do. Okay, remember a few minutes ago I said that I wasn't quite happy with those three corners. They're a little bit dark, so I'm using my levels, and I'm now going to use my brush in the normal mode, and I'm going to bring that up, not all the way, just a small amount, and I'm going to work on this again. I'm still not happy with it, and you can't get it all right to start with. So I'm lightening this off, and then I've got one more thing that I'd like to show you. Once you lighten it off, instead of, say, lightening the whole lot, sometimes it's better to again work the colour balance, off those reds and off those magentas, a little bit more blue. This is tweaking again, and we've already done this once, but it doesn't hurt to do it again until you get it exactly how you feel it should be. All right, so we flatten that, and now I'm going to use the clone tool. Not 100%, get the brush smaller, and I'm going to clone these little areas in from nearby. So again, I'll click the clone button, and I'm going to just take the top of that out so it's lighter, and just add a few more little pieces of cloud in there. I feel that that is a lot nicer than what it was. And then a final thing that I want to do is get the right family of colour, go into my gradient tool, and then very gently from far away outside the photograph, just darken that off a tiny bit. That is looking really, really good. It's how I visualised it after running up that roadway and seeing that beautiful photograph with the storm coming back again, a few brief moments of sunlight. So stroke, and then the image size. Change it to inches. As you know, I like 42 inches, and you'll find that it's not high enough for me, so I'm going to change resample it to 18 inches by 42 inches there. That's how I want it. Very happy with this. So we'll just go out to the black, and that is a beautiful backlit image with a brief appearance of the sun. It's just wonderful. Late winter in this part of the world is both mesmerising and awesome. It's a place I particularly love. Now Ewen, Shellie, Froidevaux, and myself, we will run winter workshops continually to this wonderful area of Arctic Norway. I invite you all to join us on our next adventure here, and details for getting further information about these amazing workshops can be found in the description of this presentation. Until next time, this is Ian Rolfe, and I thank you for watching.